The phone screamed at 1 a.m. in the morning, ripping me out of sleep so violently I knocked the lamp off my nightstand. My mother's voice came through the speaker like broken glass. Vanessa, your sister is dying. We need $17,000 by sunrise or she's gone. No hello. Just a demand wrapped in panic, delivered like I was supposed to have that kind of money sitting in a shoebox under my bed. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely hold the phone. But the part that still haunts me, the part that changed everything, was what the police told me 6 hours later when they called back. Before I tell you what happened next, tell me where you're listening from. Drop it in the comments, because when you hear this story, you'll understand why I need to know I'm not the only one who's been treated like a backup plan instead of family. Now I would like you to do me a favor. Grab a cup of coffee and stay with me as we ride together into this story. My name is Vanessa, and for most of my life I thought being the dependable daughter meant something. I'm 32 now, living in Austin in a one-bedroom apartment I worked 3 years to afford. The walls are white, the furniture mismatched, but every single piece of it is mine. Paid for with money I earned writing technical manuals for software companies, the kind of work that sounds boring until you realize it pays well enough to build a life that doesn't depend on anyone else. And maybe that's why my family always expected me to be their emergency fund. My sister Brooke is 5 years younger than me, and from the time we were kids, the difference between us was obvious. She was the one who got piano lessons while I got a lecture about being grateful. She was the one who got a car for her 16th birthday while I got a bus pass and a reminder that I was more independent. When she dropped out of college halfway through her second year, my parents called it finding herself. When I asked if I could take a semester off to work and save money, my father told me I was being irresponsible. I stopped asking for things a long time ago. Brooke moved back home after college and she never really left. She'd get jobs that lasted a few months, then quit because her boss was toxic, or the work was beneath her. My parents would sigh and cover her rent, her phone bill, her car insurance. And every single time I visited, I'd hear the same thing. You're so lucky you have it together. Brooke just needs more time. Time. That word became the excuse for everything. But that night when my mother called at 1 a.m., time had apparently run out. Vanessa, listen to me. My mother's voice cracked like she'd been crying for hours. Brooke is in the hospital. She collapsed at a friend's house. They're saying it's her kidneys. She needs emergency treatment, but the insurance won't cover it. We need $17,000 by 6 in the morning or they're not going to treat her. My brain was still foggy with sleep, trying to catch up. Wait, what hospital? What happened? There's no time for questions. My father's voice cut in. He must have been on speaker. We've called everyone we know. No one has that kind of money. You're the only one who can help. The only one. As if I'd been saving up for this exact moment. As if my emergency fund was their emergency fund. I don't have $17,000, I said, my voice coming out smaller than I wanted. I have savings, but not that much. And even if I did, I need to know what's going on. What hospital is she at? Can I talk to a doctor? Vanessa, for once in your life, stop being so selfish. My mother's voice turned sharp, the kind of sharp that used to make me flinch when I was 10. Your sister is dying and you're asking questions like you don't trust us. We're her parents. We wouldn't lie about something like this. Dying. The word sat heavy in my chest. I thought about Brooke, about the last time I saw her 3 months ago at Thanksgiving. She'd looked fine. Tired maybe, but fine. She'd spent most of the dinner on her phone, barely speaking to me except to ask if I could Venmo her money for gas. How much do you have? My father's voice was calmer now, like he was negotiating. Whatever you can send, send it now. We'll figure out the rest. I sat up in bed, the room spinning a little. The clock on my phone read 1:14 a.m. Outside my window, Austin was silent, just the hum of distant traffic and the low buzz of my air conditioner. Everything felt unreal, like I was watching this happen to someone else. I can send 5,000, I heard myself say. But I need to talk to Brooke first. I need to hear from her that she's okay. She's unconscious, Vanessa. My mother's voice cracked again. She can't talk to anyone. Just send the money. Please. We're begging you. Begging. They were begging. And something about that word made my stomach twist. Because in all the years they'd asked me for help, for money, for favors, for my time, they'd never begged. They'd expected. They'd demanded and they'd guilt-tripped. But they'd never begged. Give me 10 minutes, I said. I need to log into my bank. Thank you. My mother exhaled like she'd been holding her breath. Thank you, Vanessa. You're saving her life. The line went dead. I sat there in the dark staring at my phone. The screen glowed faint blue in my hands, and I could see my reflection in the black mirror of the turned-off TV across the room. I looked small, tired and scared. $5,000. That was a third of my emergency savings. Money I'd been building for 3 years, putting away $200 every paycheck even when it meant eating rice and beans for dinner. Money I was saving for a down payment on a house, for the life I was trying to build that didn't involve one-bedroom apartments with thin walls and neighbors who played music at 2 a.m. But Brooke was my sister. And if she was dying, then what did any of that matter? I opened my banking app, fingers hovering over the transfer button. And then I stopped. Something felt wrong. I couldn't name it at first. It was just a feeling, a small cold thread pulling at the back of my mind. My mother had said Brooke collapsed at a friend's house. But Brooke didn't have friends she visited at 1 a.m. She barely left the house except to go to the grocery store or the mall. And kidney failure didn't just happen. It built up. There were symptoms. Wouldn't someone have noticed? I closed the banking app and opened my contacts. Scrolled down to Brooke's number. My thumb hovered over the call button. If she was unconscious, she wouldn't answer. But maybe someone at the hospital would. Maybe a nurse could tell me what was happening, could confirm that this was real, that my parents weren't exaggerating and I wasn't about to drain my savings for nothing. I pressed the call. The phone rang once, twice, 3 times. And then Brooke answered. Hello. Her voice was groggy and annoyed. Like I'd just woken her up from a deep sleep. My blood turned to ice. Brooke. I whispered. Vanessa? What the hell? It's 1 in the morning. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't think. The room tilted sideways and I gripped the edge of my bed to steady myself. Where are you? I managed to ask. I'm home. In bed. Where else would I be? She yawned. Why are you calling me in the middle of the night? Mom and Dad just called me, I said slowly, each word feeling like it was being pulled from somewhere deep and hollow. They said you're in the hospital. That you're dying and you need $17,000 for emergency treatment. Silence. Not the kind of silence that comes from shock. The kind that comes from being caught. Brooke, I said, my voice sharper now. Are you in the hospital? No. Her voice was small. I'm at home. Then why the hell did Mom and Dad just tell me you were dying? Another pause. And then she said something that made my hands go numb. I don't know. Maybe you should ask them. She hung up. I sat there in the dark, staring at the wall, trying to process what had just happened. My parents had lied. They'd called me at 1 a.m. crying, begging, telling me my sister was dying, demanding $17,000 by sunrise. And it was all a lie. But why? My phone buzzed. A text from my father. Did you send the money yet? Time is running out. I stared at those words until they blurred. And that's when I realized, this wasn't about Brooke. This had never been about Brooke. This was about me and about what they thought they could take from me. I opened my laptop, hands still shaking, and started searching. $17,000. That wasn't a random number. That was specific and calculated. I pulled up my parents' social media, scrolling back through posts from the last few months. My mother's Facebook was full of pictures. New furniture, dinners at expensive restaurants, a weekend trip to a resort in Scottsdale. And then I found it. A post from 2 weeks ago. A photo of my father standing next to a brand new truck, shiny and red, parked in their driveway. The caption read, "Finally got the upgrade we deserved. I worked hard for this one." I clicked on the comments. My aunt had written, "Congratulations. How much was the down payment?" My father had replied, "We're financing most of it, but the down payment cleaned us out. Worth it though." I felt something snap inside me. The down payment cleaned them out. And now, 2 weeks later, they needed $17,000. Not for Brooke's kidney failure. Not for an emergency, but for whatever financial hole they'd dug themselves into by buying a truck they couldn't afford. And they'd lied. They'd used my sister's life as leverage, knowing I'd be too scared, too guilty, and too desperate to say no. I didn't cry or scream. I just sat there, feeling something shift inside me, something cold and final, like a door closing. They wanted $17,000? Fine. But they were going to get something else instead. I opened a new document on my laptop and started typing. I needed to be smart about this. I needed evidence. I needed to make sure that when this was over they couldn't twist the story, couldn't make me look like the villain, couldn't call me selfish or cruel or ungrateful. I took screenshots of everything. My call log shows I'd spoken to Brooke at 1:16 a.m. The text from my father asking if I'd sent the money. The Facebook post about the truck. I saved it all in a folder labeled emergency, and then I backed it up to 3 different cloud accounts. Then I called the non-emergency police line. The operator answered on the second ring, her voice calm and professional. "This is Officer Hernandez. How can I help you?" "I need to report a potential fraud," I said, my voice steadier than I expected. "My parents called me at 1 a.m. claiming my sister was dying in the hospital and demanding $17,000 for emergency treatment. But I just spoke to my sister and she's at home asleep. I think they're trying to scam me." There was a pause. "Are your parents in the same city as you?" "No. They're in Phoenix. I'm in Austin." "I'm going to transfer you to someone who can take your statement. Can you hold it?" "Yes." The line clicked and soft hold music played. I waited, my heart pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. A new voice came on. Deeper. "This is Detective Barnes with the Phoenix Police Department. I understand you want to file a report about a possible scam involving family members." "Yes." I explained everything again slowly and clearly. The 1 a.m. call. The $17,000. The claim about Brooke dying and the phone call proved she was fine. Detective Barnes was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "Have they asked you to send money through any specific method?" "Not yet. They just told me to send it as soon as possible." "Don't send anything. If they contact you again, tell them you're arranging the transfer but need more time. Can you forward me the messages and call logs?" "Yes." "Good. Give me your email. I'm going to send you a statement form. Fill it out tonight and send it back with all the evidence you have. We'll follow up with your parents in the morning." "What's going to happen?" "If what you're saying is accurate, this could be classified as attempted fraud or financial exploitation. Depending on their intent and whether they've done this before, they could face charges. At the very least, we'll pay them a visit and make it clear this behavior isn't acceptable." I exhaled. "Thank you." "One more thing," Detective Barnes said. "If you feel unsafe or if they escalate, call 911 immediately. Family or not, this is serious." The call ended. I filled out the form. Attached every screenshot, every call log, every piece of evidence I had. And then I hit send. For the first time all night I felt something other than panic. I felt power. My phone stayed silent for exactly 43 minutes. I know because I watched every single minute tick by on my bedroom clock, lying flat on my back, staring at the ceiling, waiting for the next move. When it came, it wasn't my parents. It was my Aunt Bethany, my mother's younger sister, the one who always played peacemaker at family gatherings. Her text came through at 2:04 a.m. "Vanessa, your mom just called me crying. She says you refused to help Brooke. What's going on?" I stared at that message, feeling something dark and bitter rise in my chest. They were already spinning the story. Already painting me as the villain before I'd even said no. I typed back, "Brooke is fine. She's at home asleep. Call her yourself if you don't believe me." 3 dots appeared. Disappeared and appeared again. "What? Your mom said she's in the hospital. She was crying so hard I could barely understand her." She lied. They both did. They wanted $17,000 and made up a story about Brooke dying to get it. "I've already filed a police report." The dots vanished completely. No response. 2 minutes later my phone rang. My mother. I let it ring 4 times before answering, my voice flat and cold. "What? How could you?" She wasn't crying anymore. Now she was angry, that sharp, cutting anger she saved for when someone dared to question her. "You called the police on your own parents? Over a misunderstanding." "A misunderstanding." I repeated the words slowly, tasting how hollow they were. "You told me Brooke was dying. You begged me for $17,000. And when I called Brooke, she was at home in bed, perfectly fine. That's not a misunderstanding, Mom. That's a lie. We needed help." Her voice cracked, but it sounded performative now, like she was reading from a script. "We're drowning in bills and you have money just sitting there. You're our daughter and you're supposed to help your family. By lying about a medical emergency? By making me think my sister was dying? We knew you wouldn't help otherwise." The truth came out sharp and fast, like she'd been holding it back and finally couldn't anymore. You've become so cold, Vanessa. So selfish. You have this nice life in your nice apartment with your nice job, and you can't even spare a little bit to help the people who raised you. Something inside me went very still. The people who raised me, I said quietly, made sure I knew I was second best my entire childhood. You paid for Brooke's college and told me to get loans. You bought her a car and gave me a bus pass. You let her live at home rent-free for 7 years while I've been working since I was 16. And now you want to guilt me about having money I earned. Silence on the other end. But I could hear her breathing, sharp and uneven. The police are going to contact you in the morning, I continued. Detective Barnes from Phoenix PD. I gave him everything. The call logs, the texts, the timeline. And I told him about the truck. The truck. Her voice went small. The brand new truck Dad bought 2 weeks ago that cleaned you out. That's what this is really about, isn't it? You spent money you didn't have and needed me to bail you out. So you invented a dying daughter to manipulate me into giving it to you. Vanessa, please. Don't call me again, I said. Don't text. Don't send anyone else to guilt me. I'm done. I hung up before she could respond. My hands were shaking, but not from fear anymore. From adrenaline and sharp, clean feeling of finally saying everything I'd swallowed for years. I turned my phone on Do Not Disturb and tried to sleep, but my mind was racing too fast, replaying the conversation, imagining what would happen next. Around 4 a.m. I finally dozed off, and when I woke up at 7:30 my phone was full of notifications. 11 missed calls from my parents. 6 from my Aunt Bethany. 3 from my Uncle Paul. And 1 from a number I didn't recognize with a Phoenix area code. I called that one back first. Detective Barnes. This is Vanessa. You called. Yes. I wanted to update you. We sent officers to your parents' residence this morning around 6 a.m. They were informed that filing a false emergency report and attempting to obtain money through fraudulent claims is a crime. They were also informed that if they contact you again with demands for money or attempts at coercion, they'll be facing formal charges. My heart was pounding. What did they say? Your father was cooperative. Your mother was less so. She claimed it was a family matter and we had no right to get involved. We explained that fraud is fraud regardless of the relationship. They've been warned. If they violate that warning, call us immediately. Thank you. One more thing, Detective Barnes said. During the conversation your father mentioned they owe approximately $19,000 on recent purchases. A truck, furniture and some credit card debt. We can't force them to manage their finances better, but we made it clear that their debt is not your responsibility, and using false pretenses to obtain money from family members is illegal. I don't think they'll bother you again. 19,000. Not 17. They'd lowballed the number they asked for, probably hoping I'd be more likely to say yes to something that felt slightly less impossible. I thanked Detective Barnes again and hung up. For a long time I just sat there on my couch, coffee going cold in my hands, staring at the wall. I felt strange. Not triumphant or relieved. Just hollow. Like I'd been carrying something heavy for so long that now that it was gone, I didn't know what to do with the empty space. My phone buzzed. A text from Brooke. Mom told me what happened. I didn't know they were going to use me like that. I'm sorry. I read it 3 times, looking for subtext, for blame, for anything that sounded like she was taking their side. But it just sounded tired. I typed back. Did you know they owe $19,000? No. But I'm not surprised. They bought all this stuff last month and kept saying they deserved it. I told them they should slow down, but they don't listen to me. Are they mad at you? Mom's mad at everyone right now. She's acting like you called the cops to humiliate her, not because she literally tried to scam you. I almost laughed. Are you okay? I asked. I'm fine. I'm actually looking at apartments. I think it's time I get out of here. That message sat on my screen for a long moment. Brooke, the golden child, the one who'd been coddled and protected and given everything, was finally ready to leave. Maybe the police visit had shaken something loose in that house. Maybe she'd finally seen what I'd seen for years. If you need help moving, let me know, I typed. Thanks. And Vanessa? I really am sorry about everything. I didn't respond to that. Some apologies are too big to fit into a text message, and I wasn't ready to absolve anyone yet. But it was something. A crack in the wall. The rest of the day passed in strange, quiet suspension. I worked from home, answering emails, editing documentation, pretending everything was normal. But my mind kept drifting back to that phone call at 1 a.m., to my mother's voice breaking as she lied, to the moment I realized my own parents saw me as a resource instead of a person. Around 3 p.m. my Aunt Bethany called. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. "I owe you an apology," she said immediately. "I called Brooke this morning after you told me to. She told me everything. She told me your mom and dad have been spending like crazy and freaking out about money for weeks. I had no idea they'd go this far. They told you I refused to help a dying sister," I said flatly. "I know. And I believed them because they're family, and you don't think your family would lie about something like that. But they did. And I should have asked more questions before I texted you in the middle of the night." I was quiet for a moment, letting her sit in discomfort. "Are they okay?" I finally asked, hating that some small part of me still cared. "Define okay," Bethany said with a bitter laugh. "They're alive and they're embarrassed. Your mom is acting like you've destroyed the family. Your dad is quieter. I think he knows how badly they messed up. But neither of them has said the words, 'We're sorry.'" Of course they hadn't. "I'm not giving them money," I said. "Not now. Not ever. If that makes me the villain in this family, then it's fine. I'll be the villain." "You're not the villain, Vanessa. You're just the first person who said no. And they don't know how to handle it." We talked for a few more minutes, and when we hung up I felt something shift. Not forgiveness, but understanding. My aunt had been manipulated too. My whole family had been watching my parents spiral for years, watching them spend and demand and expect, and no one had said anything because that's what you do in families. You stay quiet. You make excuses. You enable. But I was done enabling. 2 days later my Uncle Paul called. He lived 3 hours outside Phoenix and only saw my parents a few times a year, usually at holidays. His voice was careful and measured. "I heard about what happened," he said. "Your mom called me crying, said you turned your back on the family. But then Bethany told me the real story. And I think you did the right thing. I've been watching your parents for years, Vanessa. The spending, the entitlement, the way they treat you compared to how they treat Brooke. It's not fair. It's never been fair. And someone needed to draw a line." Hearing him say it out loud, someone from the older generation, someone who was supposed to side with my parents by default, made something loosen in my chest. "Thank you," I whispered. "I'm not giving them money either," he said. "They called me yesterday, tried a different story. Said they needed help with medical bills. I told them I'd pay the hospital directly if they gave me the account number. They hung up on me. I closed my eyes. They were still trying and still lying. Still searching for someone who would give them what they wanted without asking questions. They're going to have to figure this out themselves," Uncle Paul said. "And maybe that's the best thing for them. Maybe hitting rock bottom is what they need." After that call I realized something. My parents' story was unraveling. Not because I'd exposed them in some dramatic public way, but because their lies couldn't hold up under scrutiny. Every person they called, every relative they tried to manipulate was now asking questions, comparing stories and seeing the pattern. And I didn't have to do anything except tell the truth. 3 weeks passed. I didn't hear from my parents at all. No calls, no texts, no third-party guilt trips. It was the quietest my phone had been in years. Then on a random Tuesday afternoon Brooke called. "I moved out," she said, her voice lighter than I'd heard it in years. "I got a studio apartment near Tempe. It's tiny and kind of ugly, but it's mine." "How did Mom and Dad take it?" "Not well. Mom cried and said I was abandoning her. Dad didn't say much. But I couldn't stay there anymore, Vanessa. After what they did to you, after seeing the police at the door that morning, I couldn't pretend everything was normal." "Good," I said. And I meant it. "They sold the truck," Brooke added quietly. "Last week. Dad looked miserable, but they needed the money. I think they're trying to dig themselves out of the hole, but they're doing it quietly. No more Facebook posts about upgrades and splurges." I didn't feel triumphant hearing that. I just felt tired. "Are you doing okay?" Brooke asked. "Like really okay?" I looked around my apartment. The mismatched furniture, the white walls, the small kitchen where I made coffee every morning in silence. It wasn't much. But it was mine. Built with money I earned, choices I made, and boundaries I kept. "Yeah," I said. "I think I am." 4 months went by. Fall turned to winter and Austin got that kind of cold that sneaks up on you, Not freezing but sharp enough to make you pull your jacket tighter. I kept working, kept living my quiet life, kept my distance from Phoenix. Brooke and I texted sometimes, short conversations about nothing important, the kind of small talk that feels like practice for something bigger. Then Thanksgiving arrived. I hadn't planned to go anywhere. The thought of sitting at my parents' table pretending everything was fine made my stomach turn. So I bought myself a small turkey breast, planned a quiet day alone with movies and wine, and told myself I was fine with it. But 2 days before Thanksgiving my phone rang. It was my father. I stared at his name on the screen for a long time before answering. Vanessa. His voice was different. I know I don't have the right to ask, but can we talk? In person. Why? Because I owe you an apology. A real one. Face to face. I didn't trust it or trust him. But something in his voice sounded broken in a way I'd never heard before, and against my better judgment I said, I'm not coming to Phoenix. I'll come to you. Tomorrow. Just coffee. 30 minutes. That's all I'm asking. I should have said no. I should have hung up and blocked the number and moved on with my life. But some part of me, the part that still remembered being a kid who wanted her father's approval, said yes. We met at a coffee shop near my apartment, one of those places with mismatched chairs and local art on the walls. He was already sitting at a corner table when I arrived, looking older than I remembered. His hair was grayer. His face was thinner. He stood up when he saw me and for a second I thought he might try to hug me. But he didn't. He just gestured to the chair across from him. I sat down, keeping my jacket on and my walls up. Thank you for coming, he said. I didn't respond. I just wait. He took a breath, his hands wrapped around a coffee cup he hadn't touched. I don't have an excuse for what we did. Your mother and I convinced ourselves that it was okay because we were desperate, because we were family, because you had the means to help and we didn't. But it wasn't okay. It was wrong. And I'm sorry. The words hung in the air between us. They sounded genuine, but I'd heard apologies before. Apologies that came with conditions, with expectations, with a but waiting just around the corner. Why now? I asked. It's been 4 months. Because I've had 4 months to think about what we did. 4 months of watching your mother refuse to admit we were wrong. 4 months of watching Brooke move out because she couldn't stand to be in that house anymore. 4 months of realizing that we destroyed our relationship with you over a truck. His voice cracked on that last word and I saw something in his face I'd never seen before. Shame. Real honest shame. We lost the truck, he continued. Sold it for less than we paid. Used the money to catch up on bills. We're still behind, still struggling, but we're figuring it out. Without asking you. Without lying. Without using Brooke as a pawn. I felt something shift in my chest, but I didn't let it show. What about Mom? He looked down at his coffee. Your mother is... She's having a harder time with this. She still thinks you overreacted. That calling the police was cruel. And we were just asking for help and you made it into something bigger than it needed to be. I didn't make it into anything, I said, my voice sharp. You lied about Brooke dying. You tried to manipulate me into giving you $17,000 with a fake emergency. I didn't escalate that. You did. I know. He looked up at me and his eyes were red. I know. And I've told her that. But she's not ready to hear it yet. Maybe she never will be. And I can't make her apologize if she doesn't mean it. But I can apologize for myself. For my part in it and for letting it get that far. I wanted to stay angry. I wanted to hold on to the cold, clean fury that had carried me through the last 4 months. But sitting there, looking at my father, at the man who used to carry me on his shoulders when I was 5, who used to help me with math homework, who used to tell me I could be anything I wanted, I felt something crack. Do you know why it hurts so much? I asked quietly. It wasn't just a lie. It was realizing that you saw me as a bank account instead of your daughter. That my value to this family was measured in how much I could give, not who I was. He closed his eyes. I know. And it wasn't just that night. It was years of watching you give Brooke everything while I had to fight for scraps. Years of being told I was selfish when I set boundaries. Years of feeling like I didn't matter unless I was being useful. You matter, he said, his voice breaking. You've always mattered. And I'm sorry I didn't show you that. I'm sorry I let your mother set the tone. I'm sorry I took the easy path and let you carry the weight. We sat there in silence for a long time. The coffee shop hummed with quiet conversation, the hiss of the espresso machine, the clink of ceramic mugs. Outside, people walked by with shopping bags and takeout coffee, living their normal lives, unaware of the small, painful reckoning happening in the corner booth. "I'm not giving you money," I finally said. "Not now. Not in the future. If that's why you came here." "It's not." He cut me off, shaking his head. "I don't want your money. I just wanted to tell you I'm sorry. And that I understand if you never want to talk to me again. I understand if this is the last time I see you. But I needed you to know that I see what we did. I see what I've done to you your whole life. And I'm sorry." Something in me softened just a little. Not forgiveness, but acknowledgement. He was trying. In his flawed, late, incomplete way, but he was trying. "I need time," I said. "I need space. And I need to know that if I let you back into my life, you're not going to fall back into old patterns the second things get hard. I understand. And I need you to know that things are never going to be the way they were. I'm not going to be the backup plan. I'm not going to be the emergency fund. I'm not going to sacrifice my life to make yours easier. I wouldn't ask you to. You did ask me to. For months ago." He nodded, his face crumpling. "I did. And I'll regret that for the rest of my life." I stood up, pulling my jacket tighter around me. He stood too, uncertain. "Thank you for coming here," I said. "For apologizing. It means something. But it doesn't fix everything." "I know." I turned to leave, then stopped. "Dad." He looked at me with something like hope in his eyes. "Don't come to Austin again without asking first. And don't bring Mom unless she's ready to apologize for real. Not a half apology. Not a, sorry you feel that way. A real one." "Okay." I walked out of the coffee shop into the cold November air, and for the first time in months I felt something other than anger. I felt sad. Sad for the family we could have been. Sad for the father who'd just realized too late what he'd lost. Sad for myself for the years I spent trying to earn love that should have been given freely. But I also felt free. Thanksgiving came and went. I ate my turkey breast, drank my wine, and watched my movies. It was quiet and lonely. But it was mine. Brooke called around 8 p.m., her voice bright. "Happy Thanksgiving. Are you surviving?" "I'm good. You?" "I had dinner with some friends from work. It was nice. Weird but nice. Mom kept calling me all day asking when I was coming over, and I just didn't answer." "How did that feel?" "Scary," she admitted. "But also kind of amazing. Like I finally get to decide what I do instead of feeling guilty all the time." "Yeah," I said softly. "I know that feeling." We talked for a while about nothing and everything. About her new apartment, about my work, about the strange freedom that comes from disappointing the people who've always expected too much. And when we hung up, I realized something. My parents didn't just lose me that night when they called at 1 a.m. with their fake emergency. They lost both of us. Because Brooke had finally seen what I'd been seeing for years, and she'd made the same choice I did. To walk away. To choose peace over performance. To build a life that didn't require their approval. Christmas came 6 weeks later. I was expecting silence, expecting my parents to maintain their distance, expecting to spend the holidays alone again. Instead, a package arrived at my door 3 days before Christmas. No return address, but the Phoenix postmark told me everything I needed to know. Inside was a small wooden box, hand-carved, simple. And inside the box was a folded letter and a photograph. The photograph was old, faded at the edges. It showed me at maybe 7 years old, sitting on my father's shoulders, both of us laughing at something outside the frame. I was wearing a red sweater. He was wearing his glasses, the ones he used to have before he switched to contacts. We looked happy. We looked like a family that worked. I set the photo down and unfolded the letter. The handwriting was my father's. Vanessa. I found this photo in a box in the garage last week. I'd forgotten it existed. But when I saw it, I remembered that day. We'd gone to the zoo, just the two of us. Your mother had stayed home with Brooke because she was sick. You wanted to see the elephants, and I carried you on my shoulders so you could see over the crowd. You were so happy that day. And I was happy too, because for once it was just us. No distractions. No expectations. Just a father and his daughter having a good day. I don't know when I stopped seeing you like that. When you stopped being my daughter and started being the person I expected to have everything figured out. The person I leaned on instead of supported. The person I took from instead of gave to. I can't go back and fix the years I got wrong. But I can try to do better going forward. If you'll let me. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm not asking you to forget what happened. I'm just asking for a chance someday to be the father I should have been all along. Your mother still isn't ready to apologize. I don't know if she ever will be. But I'm working on her. I'm trying to help her see what I see now. That we hurt you. That we used you. That we need to do better. Merry Christmas, Vanessa. I hope you know that even though I've been terrible at showing it, I love you. I'm proud of you. And I'm sorry. That. I read the letter 3 times, tears blurring the words. And then I looked at the photograph again, at that little girl on her father's shoulders, at the man who'd once made her feel like she could see the whole world. I didn't call him. Didn't text. Didn't send anything back. But I kept the photo. Put it on my bookshelf next to the candle and the small succulent plant I'd been keeping alive for 2 years. Because even though my parents had broken something, even though the trust was shattered and the relationship was fractured, that little girl on her father's shoulders deserved to be remembered. Not the version of me they'd wanted. Not the version who gave everything and asked for nothing. But the version who'd existed before all of that. The version who'd been loved, simply, without conditions. And maybe someday we could find our way back to something like that. But not today. Today I was still healing. Still building. Still learning to value myself the way I'd always wanted them to value me. It's been 8 months since that phone call at 1 a.m. 8 months since my parents tried to scam me out of $17,000 with a lie about my dying sister. People ask me sometimes if I regret calling the police. If I regret burning that bridge. If I regret choosing myself over my family. And the answer is always the same. No. Because that night when I realized my own parents saw me as a resource instead of a person, I had a choice. I could stay silent, send the money and teach them that lying works. That manipulation works. That I would always be there to clean up their messes no matter the cost to myself. Or I could draw a line. I chose the line. And yeah, it hurt. Still hurts. There are days when I see families laughing together in restaurants or posting holiday photos on social media, and I feel that hollow ache of what I don't have anymore. But then I look around my apartment at the life I've built with money I didn't give away, with boundaries I didn't compromise, with peace I didn't sacrifice, and I realize I made the right choice. My relationship with my father is slowly, carefully rebuilding. We text sometimes. We talk on the phone once every few weeks. It's awkward and fragile and nothing like it used to be. But it's honest. And that's more than we ever had before. My mother and I don't speak. I don't know if we ever will. And I've made peace with that. Brooke is thriving in her tiny apartment, working 2 jobs, learning to budget, learning to stand on her own. She calls me her hero, which feels strange because I didn't do anything heroic. I just said no. But maybe that's the point. Maybe sometimes the bravest thing you can do is stop letting people take from you. Stop being the safety net for people who never learn to catch themselves. Stop sacrificing your life to make someone else's life easier. My family called at 1 a.m. asking for $17,000 for my sister. But when the police called later, everything changed. Not because they faced legal consequences. Not because they went to court or got arrested or had some dramatic public reckoning. But because for the first time in my life I chose me. And that choice saved me. If you've ever had someone in your life treat you like a bank account instead of a person, if you've ever been the one everyone leans on until you break, if you've ever had to choose between keeping the peace and keeping yourself, tell me your story. Tell me where you're listening from. Because you're not alone. And you deserve better. Hit the subscribe button and like this video if this story resonates with you. Share it with someone who needs to hear it. And remember, you are not selfish for having boundaries. You are not cruel for saying no. You are not a bad person for choosing yourself. You're just finally putting yourself first. And that's not revenge. That's survival. Thank you for listening and I'll see you in the next one.